For the King and Me is a retheming, reimagining of the modern classic Biblios. Like that game, we're gonna have two phases, one in which players acquire cards, and another one in which players will use cards to bid on basically other cards, and at the end you will score the cards that you actually have at that point. With Biblios, we were doing that with books. In this new version, we do that with political influence. The players are these aristocrats in an 18th century court, and each aristocrat comes in two versions. Also, these tokens, each player will have one, but they are unnecessary to play, but it's nice to have them. And so you are one of these people trying to take control of different political offices, such as the prestigious door opener or chamber pot cleaner. Who would not want to be that? These banners represent, again, political offices that you're trying to acquire, and also they will score you victory points based on the number written there. So we're collecting cards ultimately to be able to acquire those tokens at the end of the game. You score the points from all the tokens that you have at the end of the game. Highest score wins the game. Now, each category that you score has two of those banners, and there will be game effects that will alter them, but you will always only alter the top banner directly. So it is an effect that increases the value of blue. I will change the 3 into a 4 if it increases by 1. The bottom one is influenced by the top one, in that it always represents the half of the top one rounded down. So if I turn the 3 into a 4, the 1 immediately becomes a 2. And yes, as you're actually playing the game, that is a little bit fiddly, and so what we do not actually play with the bottom banners. We just add them at the end of the game, as during the game we just remembered that there are two things that you can potentially score in each category. I mentioned that there are cards, and these are the cards. This is the deck of cards, and the cards represent influence in different kinds of offices. Say, oh, we got the orange one, we got the blue one, and so on and so forth. And some cards also represent gold. And those are the two categories of cards. The player aid with the distribution of cards is very popular. It'll go around the table a lot. People really want to know how many cards are in which category, and again, how many of each and in what distribution. However, some cards will be removed from the game at the beginning, so without players looking at them. So counting cards is more like about guesstimating cards. You cannot count cards exactly. Now, suppose we have 5 players. In general, players will alternate being the main advisor or really the active player. When that is the case, the player who is the main advisor takes the deck, places it in front of themselves, and then what they do? What they do is this. They draw a card and they look at it secretly, and then they decide what to do with it. They need to place it in one of 3 places. One is their own personal pile, in which case they just put it, if they decide to do so, face down in front of themselves. Or they can place the card that they just drew in a shared face down pile somewhere on the table. Or they can look at a card and place it in a face-up area somewhere on the table. Basically, you will continue like this until the active player will continue like this until the active player has 1 card. There is 1 card in the face-down pile, and then there are enough cards here so that all of the other players will have 1. So with 5 players, it'll be 6 cards. With 3 players, it'll be 4 cards, because there's always 1 card per player, 1 for the active player, 1 for each of the other players, plus 1 face down. Once this is done, the non-active players in turn order will each select one of these cards and put it in their personal face down pile. So at the end of the round, when all is said and done, everybody has a face down card added to their personal pile. And again, there is a common pile that is face down, which is being built there. Some of these cards are not actually placed in your pile. Once somebody acquires them, they will modify those tiles there. For example, the player that acquires this card will be able to reduce the value of 2 top banners on that board, and then this card is discarded out of the game. And then another player becomes the top advisor, and again, they will do the same thing. One there, and maybe another one there, and maybe one in that secret pile, and oh, a lot of these. You know what? Suppose that I decide to take it, and then I get to reduce the value of one of these. And then we continue like this. So, this is the general idea, which means that we continue like this until this deck is exhausted. So that means that at the end, each player will have a personal deck. There will be a deck there. So when that is the case, when the main deck has been distributed that way, then we start the second phase of the game. We take the face down deck that was built throughout the game and we place it where everybody can see it, and then everybody picks up their deck, and that becomes their hand of cards. Now we're gonna auction the cards that are here, so somebody will turn that face up, and we're gonna start bidding for those. Where the cards represent political influences, you can bid on them and pay for using gold. The cards, there may be gold cards in here, and those also, if that is the case, when we are auctioning a gold card, the currency is other cards, disregarding the value printed on them entirely. So, when we are bidding on offices, is the number of gold produced by cards. When we're bidding on gold, it's just the number of cards that we are bidding. And that's the idea. So, we reveal that one. The first player says, like, okay, I'm bidding, or let's say, is this one? Okay, I'm bidding 2. And then we go around, and the other players can pass or raise the bid by at least 1. Player with the highest bid has to discard cards to pay for it. Suppose that I decided to bid 5, and I'm the highest bidder, so I discard 5, and I take this one into my hand. And then we auction the next one, and so on and so forth. So this is the idea. You will continue until this deck is exhausted, so your hand probably won't be the same one that you had at the beginning. And then the actual hand is used to determine in each category who has the highest influence. Say we put together all of the orange points, and I have 2. Probably that's not gonna be me who has the highest. The player with the highest in each category takes the top banner. Second player takes the second banner. For tiebreakers, we're going to use these letters here, and whoever has the letter that comes first alphabetically breaks the tie. So you, at the end of the game, you assign all these banners. Highest score wins the game. The game clearly is very similar to Biblios. It is basically Biblios with a different theme and with that extra scoring, the second category. And what can I say? If you like one, you're very likely to like the other. There's enough difference, I believe, here to change anybody's mind about the original game, which is a game that I happen to like. It was all the rage in the early 2000s. I think you remember that if you were playing games around that time. So to me, it's nice to see, well, a new version. Incidentally, I know I have my copy of Biblios somewhere. I just haven't physically seen it in a while. Sometimes I just lose games in here, so that happens. And when I saw this game in my friendly local game store and I decided to pick it up, actually it just was because the art was goofy and looked funny, and it seems like a light and simple game. I hadn't even realized that it was a reskinning of Biblios. In any case, it was fun for me to play a new version of Biblios again. Why? Because, well, first, I like auction games. I really do. It may just be one of my favorite game mechanics, actually. Because you know that I play a lot of games solitaire, and I guess that when I play games with my friends at game night, I really enjoy games that give value to the human element that cannot possibly be played solo. And that's the idea of the auction game, which is so much about reading the opponents, figuring out what they're gonna bid and what they're going for, and the fact that the value of things is really relative and has a subjective element, meaning I think that Dylan really wants that one. I think the Sam may not need that one so much, and so I'm gonna try to change my bid accordingly, trying to not to overbid, but just to bid enough. Another disclaimer, I'm not particularly good at auction games. I just enjoy them so much despite the fact that I tend to overbid too much in the early phases of the game and be stuck later. And the fact that I can tell you this after I played auction games for decades tells you can't somehow learn from that. But I still enjoy the challenge. I'm like, maybe this is the game where I can do better. It's not, but it's a game that I still enjoy. The fact that the game is split into two phases may feel a bit disjointed if you haven't played Biblios, but somehow it works because, of course, you're already planning ahead and trying to figure out what are the colors that you're specializing in, and therefore what are the colors that you're going to sabotage by using those game effects. And maybe it's early on that people start sabotaging yours and you can still turn it around and specialize in something else or mess things up for other people. So actually the fact that the first phase of the game is preparation for the second phase, which of course is the one that feels maybe more meaningful, but not entirely, because basically that is where you're gonna adjust your course a little bit, adjust your strategy based on what you collected early on. If you have no blue cards whatsoever, say, it's not likely that you're gonna become the big king or queen of the blue in the second phase of the game. But it feels in that sense that the second part is maybe more meaningful, but they're still connected and there's still a smooth transition. The game moves fast because it's very intuitive, and because once players know how it works, okay, this one is for me, this one's for the table, face down pile, for the table, then everybody chooses one. So although you have this big stack, which may feel daunting, the game really flows fast. Matter of fact, it feels sort of like an extended filler. To me, a true filler is like 10-15 minutes. This one can play, depending on number of players, between 20 and 30. Which is just nice. Production, I like the art, I like the thickness of the components, not a fan of those banners. As I said, it just feels like they're complicating things unnecessarily. Maybe it's part of the Instagram age, because at the end of the game you place those banners under your portrait. It looks nice and you take a picture and share it on social media, which is, say, I did that once. So, maybe that's why they went for it, but I think makes the game a little more fiddly to play logistically. But that's a very minor complaint for what otherwise is, I believe, a very fun, very enjoyable reskinning of Biblios. Again, this is not going to change anybody's mind about the basic idea of Biblios, but I enjoyed it originally, and I enjoyed it in this version also.